Hey guys, back again. So this time we're going to discuss how do I know if I'm overloading my system. As shown on the home screen of the monitor, if you'll watch the first video in this series, the home screen of the monitor, it tells you the model of your machine and the running amperage. This is continuous running amperage that's allowed for your model of machine. So basically, we're going to go through this here a little more in depth this time. We want to keep in mind that the higher voltage settings, such as the grass, will require more amps or more current to be produced by the generator. I'm going to give you a little example here in just a second of what we're talking about there, but I want you to understand that if we are running in those higher settings in high weed pressure, we're only seeing an increase of about 2% on our voltage. If your hydraulics only had a 2% difference, you won't notice a difference in the way they react. Okay? If we are running in a scenario where we're running the same or within the voltage parameters of the system, on a 16-row system that's 450 amps or below, we'll see a 20% increase in voltage. 20% is enough to see a difference. We're going after those trouble weeds. We're going after them on the second pass. Velvet leaf or button weed is one of those that I get a lot of calls about and do a lot of explaining. And grasses, foxtail, that's something where we see that also. So we're going to hit those hard ones, those harder to kill weeds. We're going to hit them with a lot more voltage, but only if we're not seeing our amp scale rise. So let's talk about the amp scale here. So I'm going to show you right now, we're not zapping, but I'm going to go ahead and start zapping because everything is ready. And you see right now we have coloring on our generator temperature, coloring on our voltage, coloring on our RPM, and coloring on our speed, but our amps, which is a measurement of current, has no coloring on it, but we're showing 200 amps. So obviously we are shocking something because we are showing amperage, but we're not exceeding the 450 amps that this system is capable of. So as long as we're not continuously exceeding that, we will never see this amp come across. This is an average. This is not a one-time hit. If you see it flash up to 550 amps, it will not move this. But if you see it flash up to, and I'll show you here in just a second, 770 amps, we'll show you here in just a moment. I hit it with 770 and you see it almost instantly start to rise because we have well exceeded the amperage overload of the system. So when we overload that amperage, we're going to find out that we get less of a weed kill. We're going to get those weeds that are killed to down maybe within a foot of the ground but not killed all the way into the root system. In velvet leaf you can see an S kill, which is basically it kills the top of the plant and it'll come down, it'll snake out, and it'll grow back up again. It's not an entire kill at that point. This is a heavy indicator of system overload. So pay attention to that amperage right there. So once again, we're going through the field and I'm going to hit into a heavy weed patch, but I can see that it's just a patch of weeds. So I'm going to go ahead and let her grind on through there, and I'm going to kill most of them because it's just a short patch. But if the patch is too long, I'm going to get into a scenario where it's going to shut me down. A shutdown can take anywhere from, on the amperage scale, can take anywhere from 30 seconds up to about 3 minutes to cool off. So if we're dealing with an entire field that's this scenario, we only have one option. That's raise our bar up and hit just the tallest weeds first, come back in 5 days, and run our bar height based upon not only the height of the canopy of soybeans that we're running in, but run our bar height based upon what our amperage scale is telling us to. We got to keep in mind that an overloaded system is not an effective system, not as effective. So if I'm going through the entire field and my bar graph is coming up and just staying up and staying up and staying up, I might as well raise up, and as soon as I raise up, I'm going to see that drop back down to an acceptable level. So that's one thing that we're going to see on the overload, the high generator amps. The other thing we're going to see is a lot of these, and these are made to protect your generator, but also to annoy you a little bit because we want to save the life of that generator. So I'm being very honest with you here. We are dropped down to 1500 generator RPM because our tractor engine has pulled down, because we're in a heavy weed patch. It has been at 1500 generator RPM for 4 seconds or more. This will not happen if it only bumps 1500 RPMs. It has to stay there for a continuous 4 seconds for you to get this warning. Even if you didn't see it, that's the way it's programmed. So we would acknowledge this, and it's going to take us back to our weed selection. I see that I'm running on the grass, which takes the most horsepower. So I'm going to go back to the broadleaf setting, which is going to take less horsepower. It's also going to run a 20% cooler generator. In that heavy weed pressure, the grass setting does me no good. Once again, if it's just a spot in the field that we're going to go through, maybe it's going to take us 5 or 10 seconds. Okay, maybe we don't have to change it at that point. But if it's the entire field, go back to the setting it's designed to run on. Watch your bar height. So I went back to my broadleaf now. My RPM hasn't changed, but now I get into a lighter horsepower requirement, so my RPM comes back up. So that is how the low RPM works. Keep in mind that's a 1 second acknowledgement on that low RPM. I'm going to show you that one more time. My RPMs have dropped low, 4 seconds passes. I don't really want to look at my monitor. I'm looking straight ahead to see where I'm driving, and it does nothing. The button's not broken. I want you to read it and understand what's going on. Okay, so now we're going to go into what would happen next, and that would be the hot generator scale. So basically, I'm going through there, my amps are too high, and I'm going to overheat my generator after I've done this for a little bit. So I'll show you what happens there. We automatically shut the system down, and I go into a hot generator scenario. So these are my instructions. Once again, this has a 1 second acknowledgement. You have to stay in the seat, your wings have to stay on the ground, your generator RPM, not tractor engine, not PTO RPM, but your generator RPM that's on the monitor must stay over 1500 RPMs. Do not throttle down. So I'm going to acknowledge that. I have my wings raised up right now because I don't want to miss my example. So because my wings are raised up, I am not counting anything. I'm going to put my wings on the ground. Instantly, it starts counting again. This scale will count all the way across to 120 seconds. If I forget what I have to do, then I go back and I read my instructions again. Once again, as long as you are above 1600 RPMs, as long as your wings are on the ground, as long as your butt's in the seat, this will count down. I also put on here that you're running a 16R30 model. Your amp should not exceed 400 to 450 amps continuous. If they do, your scale comes up on your amperage, and now we're telling you you're getting ready to have a shutdown. You know, Steady Eddie wins the race, okay? So every time we have a shutdown, it's like having multiple turnarounds. Let me give you a little bit of math here. If I have a 1 mile long field, I can run 3.3 miles per hour. And on that 3.3 miles per hour, I'll cover 1 acre per row per hour. 16 row unit, 16 acres an hour. If I have a 1/4 mile long field, exact same machine, 16 row, I have to run 3.9 miles per hour to achieve 16 acres per machine, or 1 acre per row per hour. 3.9 versus 3.3. What's the difference? Turnaround time. If we're turned around, we're shut off and we're not zapping. If we're waiting on a generator cool down, if we're waiting on a generator over amperage, we're shut down. It's like having to stop and turn around. So keep your speed in that 3.5 mile per hour. Watch your amperage overload. It's okay if it bumps up again there now and again, but if we're running continually above, we're going to have nuisance shutdowns that get very irritated. So keep in mind, the field didn't get bad in one day. It's not going to get cleaned up in one day. There's never a field that you can't clean up, but there's a lot of fields that you're not going to clean up in one pass. So those bad fields, go into it with the mentality of, it's going to take me a couple days, a couple passes, but I'm going to win this battle, and you will. Thanks, and God bless.